Hello, Cooper families. This is Colleen Evans, your Dean of Students, and today we are going to discuss our last presentation that was held on Monday, November 7th for our Cobra Community Circle, which featured Mental Health 101 information. We had Linda Folan from Omni present. However, this presentation was created by Jenna Pavlik. She is one of the counselors that works with Omni as well as here at Cooper Middle School. So first, we want to just go ahead and get started with a brief definition. What is mental health? As we know, there's a lot of stigmas and assumptions, but truly mental health is the emotional, psychological, and well-being of a person. And that's important to note as we move into the next several slides to really dismantle some of those assumptions. So let's take a look with some data and some statistics specifically regarding middle school students, so students in that adolescence phase. These statistics come from the cdc.gov website, and I think the numbers are really astounding. First, we have ADHD. Over 6 million middle school students have been diagnosed with ADHD. And we definitely see that on the rise every single day. Next, we have over 5 million students who really suffer from anxiety, and there's been a huge increase in the last 2 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Remote learning, school shutting down, just the variables of unknown throughout the pandemic did create a lot of anxiety amongst adolescents as well as adults. Next, we have over 5.5 million students who have different types of behavioral issues. These might be a little bit harder to really pinpoint and diagnose, but we are seeing them specifically in the middle school setting. And then lastly, over 2.7 million students suffer from depression. A lot of times depression and anxiety are also kind of coupled and interwoven together. So we want to look at what are some of the contributing factors to these really high numbers. And really, it's broken into three different components. The first is biological. So, genetics or the use of substances such as drugs and alcohol during pregnancy can be some of the reasons why students might be diagnosed with ADHD or anxiety. But it doesn't just end there. There's also environmental factors. So the first one talks about trauma. And the reason we bring in trauma is because um, a student might experience trauma at a very young age. It's something that they cannot control. And an example might be something like a house fire or a natural disaster that was one single traumatic event that replays in that student's head and causes some like PTSD or anxiety around that traumatic event. Another one is bullying. And I know last month in our Cobra Community Circle, we spoke about bullying and the different components. Bullying can be physical, which is the most well-known type of bullying, but also verbal and emotional. And that can carry some weight into factors of mental health. And then lastly, psychological. So we have lifestyle, stress levels, and personality characteristics. When we're looking at psychological, this could mean an example of a student who's born in poverty, which could create a lot of uninduced types of stress because they don't know where their next meal is coming from or where they're going to be living. And so that can also couple into trauma as well. So a lot of these contributing factors are all interwoven together, but it can be one single or isolated incident too. So we wanted to take a look at what is really going on with our students during adolescence and during this time of middle school. There's a couple just really typical things that are happening and that's developmentally appropriate. The first is students and adolescents are really trying to establish their personal identity. So they might be showing that by the clothes that they're wearing or the way that they want to do their hair. They're trying to get a sense of who they are as they are transitioning into adulthood. Along with personal identity is students are trying to develop their own personal independence. And that might come off as sometimes students isolating or not talking to us. And it's nothing personal. It's more that they're trying to gain that freedom and independence by maybe figuring it out on their own and not asking for advice from older adults. Another factor with developing personal independence can be debating or asking a lot of clarifying questions. Students often want to be seen and heard during this stage of their life. And that's something that is really important that we are listening to those questions and listening not to respond, but listening to truly understand. And then last is expanding personal relationships. And so that's more the social peer interactions that you'll see. That's really important component of the adolescent stage. So just like last month, we wanted to touch upon the interconnectedness of bullying and why really bullying. So I'm going to pause here to read the 5 different issues of why often students might be bullies themselves or subjected to bullying type behavior. All right, so moving right along, we want to talk about mental health and the stigma that is correlated with it. Several years ago, when you would talk about mental health, society really viewed it as a negative thing to seek help and support. And so we've come a really long way. Mental health is something that you're starting to see different people on media platforms speak about with their own struggles, but there still are some negative stereotypes, labels, judgments, and prejudices around that. So I want to go a little bit deeper and define some of these key components. The first one is stereotypes, which really is just a generalized belief. And so an example of a stereotype might be that people with mental health issues are violent. And so that stereotype then might feed into prejudice, which is based off of that belief. And so someone who says someone with mental health is violent, that therefore I am scared and I don't want to be friends with that person and really isolate from that person instead of being able to talk through it and through the struggles. And then lastly, we have discrimination, which is more the action based off of those judgments. And so an example might be I will not befriend someone with mental health issues because I am scared. And so that idea, notion of being scared lends itself to that stereotype and that prejudice. So lastly, we wanted to wrap up the presentation with what now? So if you're seeing some behaviors that are atypical, do not worry. Adolescence can be a very complicated transition time for students. There are a lot of different factors for that. However, if you are seeing different signs of a mental health issues such as ADHD, anxiety, depression, the first thing is to just really ask open-ended questions. Um, Try to put the assumptions aside and really make sure that you are truly understanding the student's needs and concerns. Next is to show empathy, just a care and a concern, and never take things too lightly. So if your student is reporting a way that they're feeling, not to brush it off, but to say, wow, that's really hard. I'm sorry you're going through that. Um, and then mindfulness, which in a very fast-paced society that we live in is really a struggle for our students. Our students are inundated with a lot of sensory, specifically with technology and social media platforms. And so there's this sense of urgency for our students to respond to their peers immediately. And so we want to do a lot of work on keeping our students grounded and mindful. We talk a lot here at Cooper about pushing the pause button and that it's actually okay to not feed into that sense of urgency and take a moment to pause and be thoughtful before you act or post anything on social media that could have some ramifications. And lastly, as always, seek out outside help. Cooper works really closely with OmniU Services. We are very lucky to have Jenna here every Wednesday. And so always reach out to the school. And this is Jenna's direct email. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate. We really thank you for viewing this presentation, and I want to personally invite you in December. We will be having our next Cobra Community Circle, and we really look forward to welcoming you to Cooper to join us for that. Thank you so much.